Hello, my friends. Welcome. I'm so happy to have this chance to connect. And one of the things I was thinking about for our sharing today, the image that we used in our newest relationship book, which came out a few years ago, Lasting Love Ever After, has to do with what occurs when you continue practicing the loop of awareness. And so I wonder if, Michelle, if you could put that slide up, and I'd like to just talk about it for a second. So the what we've been doing is circulating attention. And what we've really learned is that circulation really determines your health. It is above all other dynamics, increasing your circulation has the most beneficial health impact. And so what I've noticed is if I am practicing loop of awareness, this is what it can turn into, is a kind of an engine in the middle where you're experiencing your attention flowing through and around you, and then through and around the other, and then through and around you. And notice that it crosses in this space in between. So, one of the dynamics that I notice is that with my practice, I'm actually generating presence in the space between, not just presence inside myself or giving presence to another. I'm actually generating flow in the space. And so those little wavy lines and sort of ghosty things in the background there are to illustrate that as you practice, you begin to fill what can be an empty attention space. It's full of the possibility of connection, and that connection can happen just through your presence. And so I wanted to play with you today about flow, how we create that flow. And just while we have the illustration up, I'd like you to imagine this loop going around you and then around somebody else that's not located where you are, maybe located in another place, but sending it out and around them, and then back and around you, and then out and around them. And I'd like you to just notice, does that feel like a smooth rhythm? Does it feel kind of jerky? Do you lose the sense of the form and then find it again? Are you just kind of guessing at what to do? Just notice how you experience that, the intention to create flow through your attention. And this is an illustration that I find valuable to look at occasionally and then let myself embody. So that's what I want to play with today. And thanks, Michelle, for putting it up. I'd like to come back now to us. So what enhances flow and what stops flow? So what I'd like you to do is just be continuing. In fact, use your hands or just a hand to make that shape. So you're making it out, and then you're making it around you, and then you're making it out there. And I'd like you to let yourself play with the rhythm of that. So a lot is if you're doing it like I'm doing this because you told me to do it, and I'm going to just go through the motions. And just notice what it's like where, okay, I'm going out here and then I'm going back here. And notice that if that enhances your flow or decreases your flow. And now drop the hands out and just imagine that you're letting your attention flow around you. And then it could be around, for me, around the trees that are outside, and then back and around me. And I'd like you to be both doing this and then also noticing what's the nature of the flow. Does it feel like a stream, or do you go off into a tributary someplace? Does the flow stop? Like I notice that the flow tends, if it's going to stop over here, it tends to stop when I'm going behind myself. So the going around is less familiar to me than having things come out my front. So I find that as I'm playing with how is this flow moving, it gives me a bunch of information about how I am. So the two things that I'd like to have you experiment with today are, first, let yourself breathe fully, as fully as you can. And that might mean moving a little bit. So it might mean that you get up and you move around a little bit so that you're letting your breath really open up fully in you. And with a full breath, notice how that changes the flow going out and attention then coming back and around. So when you're breathing fully, in fact, maybe even more fully than you normally breathe, just to try that on of a big full breath and a big full breath that your attention is riding on. And now for contrast, I'd like you to make your breath smaller. Make your breath smaller, like they're just as much breath as you need to function. And notice what happens to your attention. So you're creating that loop. For me, when I shorten my breath, the flow stops. So I'd like you to notice what happens to your attention when you're letting your breath be more held. So just experiment with that for a little bit, letting it go out and around, out there in the world, and then back and around you, but with very little breath. Yeah, and I can even just tell by looking at you, there's this kind of clunk, 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 clunk. So you might notice that the rhythm stops. Now, let yourself go back to an easy breathing. And I'm adding in here the other element, which is moving. So let's stay with the breathing a little bit, but you'll notice that you can't breathe without moving. So when you're breathing easily, notice if that enhances the flow of your attention. So let yourself play with that in any way that feels pleasurable to you. So you can add in movement, you can add in gestures. So breathing is one of the first things that goes when you lose your attention or your attention get captured, like the, or the, not letting yourself breathe because then you become invisible. So now I'd like you to add in movement. So usually like in mindfulness, it doesn't come with movement. So letting yourself shift your attention to outside and shifting it to inside and letting yourself breathe in a shallow way while you're doing that. And let your movement start to match your breathing. So you're not moving very much. You're just letting it go back and forth from your eyes. When I do that, I almost immediately, I know some of you are yawning. I notice that I almost immediately, I have less energy. I start feeling, oh, why bother? What's the use? I start getting those kinds of thoughts coming in. So now notice what happens if you just simply add a little bit of movement. Doesn't have to be much. Movement that's pleasurable for you, and maybe a movement that's new for you, going in a different direction or having a different kind of rhythm to it. And see, we're doing two things at once here. We're doing like belly and patting your head. You're going to be moving and shifting your awareness. So when you have just a little bit of background movement, I notice that for me, that opens the flow of my attention instantly. So let yourself play with that of moving a little bit and releasing your breath, and then noticing how that enhances your being able to shift your attention. It's my theory that as we open the flow of moving and breathing, it allows more of the flow of attention to happen very naturally and organically. And it allows us to respond more fully to what's going on out here and also to what's going on inside here. So I'd like you to get curious about how you most often stop the flow. Is that more through stopping your breath or more through stopping your movement? For me, that kind of go together, but for sure, when I stop movement, everything else stops. So for me, that's a very quick shift move to restart flow, is I just start moving a little bit, and especially move something that hasn't been moving. So for example, your jaw, that's a great place to check, because if that's one of the places where we clamp down, and it clamps down the energy in the rest of our body. So if you just do a little bit of that, for me, then opens my breath. I just had a nice big open breath from opening my movement. And then that allows me, I start getting curious about what's going on around me. It kind of opens the container so that I'm not just in me. I start going, oh, what else is going on? And that curiosity is such a flow enhancer. So I want to invite you to let your light movement, pleasurable movement, and releasing your breath, letting that ride on your attention as you let that infinity sign, that figure 8, just surround you around. And you could let it go, for example, around this whole group, welcoming everybody that's in this group, and then welcoming yourself. And the trick is, the skill is, the practice is to just simply add it back in again when you lose it. Just add the movement back in again, add the breath back in again, and you can get a felt sense of how that opens the flow, enhances what you're doing, both with yourself and with others. So let yourself take a couple of minutes to play with that. And I also want you to, while you're playing, notice what some other folks are doing, because you can get some great ideas from what other people in the group are doing. That's part of the joy of practicing together. There's some cool thing like Patrick is playing with the ball, Megan is standing up, Jason's playing on his chair. So you can do this in all kinds of different settings. I would like the flow of attention to be as simple as breathing and moving. And I think it can be. And that when we experience that flow, creativity and connection and new ideas come with it. And a new sense of other people and the possibilities of collaboration. So here we are, not quite at the end of our time together. I wanted to have you just consider, is there any intention? Is there any quality of attention that any of you would like that we can add to our flow here? And if there is, please write it in the chat, because I always like to add in some infusions with our attention. If anybody has a particular request for attention, I would love to include that right now. And while I'm waiting, I'm going to take a drink.
I see warmth, compassion, and peace.
All right, well, let's take those. Warm, compassion. For me, compassion is being with, and the quality of warmth you can let come through you and then out. So there was warmth and compassion. What was the third one?
Peace.
Peace. And Gay and I think of peace as total participation. not stopping things, but completely participating with what's going on. So I'd like you to include any or all of those in your loop now. So you're sending that both around and through you, but you're also offering that to anybody who needs that in the group or anybody who's watching this later. Oh, and smiles. I see smiles there. So just picturing a smile, like in a little raft going around on that loop of awareness. There's a smile that's going around. I find all of those things making my loop of awareness more buoyant, more filled out, and I can feel it's more like a caress, and that's a quality that you can be giving with your attention. So sometimes with my attention, especially like when my cats are misbehaving, the attention I give them is like and more of a focused attention, and the quality of attention that is a caress and an embrace is what I give them after they behave well. So you can include those intentions with your attention to just create more richness for you. So I'd like to move now to our Presence Connect play for today from our app. And those of you who don't know about the app, could you put that, Michelle, in the in the chat? Thanks. So Presence, notice and follow what your body wants to do most. Notice and follow what your body wants to do most. So great. So just invite your body. And the whole intention to invite, I really love that too, of inviting what my body most wants to do. And it can be big or little, but I'm bringing my attention to myself. So rather than telling my body what to do, I'm inviting my body to tell me what's going on. And that intention to listen and appreciate and be with creates presence. So that's an invitation for you for the next week in presencing. And connecting is choose to see others as allies on your team. I've been aware in this last period of time that my attention, especially for what has been going on in the collective, have been getting pretty blamey. And I was totally justified in that. You know, that was part of it too, because there was lots to blame. And I noticed that the blame, the quality of blame was not fun. You know, it gave me adrenaline, but it definitely was not fun. And so this is a great invitation for me. And I think you probably have people in your life that you find it challenging to see as allies. So pick one of those folks that, if you did experience them as allies, could make a really big difference in your connection. So I'm thinking of one person in my life that am I willing to see them as an ally? I have, yes, but so I'm going to do some play with my hands. Yes, I'm willing to see them as allies, and I'm not, because they cheated. And I'm willing to see them as allies. And I still want them to say they were wrong. And so I'm still attached to blaming in there. And rather than making myself wrong, I'm going to play with that. I'm willing and I'm not willing. I'm willing to see them as allies and I'm not willing. So that's where that is for me right now. And then play. The invitation for play is receive, then toss. So there's so many ways of interpreting this. So we could do first with loop of awareness. You could receive loop of awareness for you and letting it land, and then toss and letting that toss out somewhere where love and attention might make a difference, and then bring it back to you. So in conversations, you can receive and then toss. We have a whole video on what we call the art of the toss on the foundation website. So that's a place where you could go more deeply if you wish. So one of the things that we do now in our loops and scoops in the practice is have some things that we can practice throughout the week and that we can add to. I also want to invite you to share the Presence Connect Play app with others, because it's also a great way to connect. It's a great way to open up new possibilities in your communication. So thank you all so much for being here. It's great to see people I haven't seen in a while and great to see new faces. So thank you so much for being here. And also I want to invite you to invite other folks to join us, because I intend to do this as long as it's of value to us. Starting the week this way is a great, I really love it. And I look forward to what's going to be emerging for me, because I never know what we're going to do until it emerges. And sometimes it's right before we do, sometimes it's the night before. So that's very fun for me. And I find our collective energy really enhances the creativity for all of us. So thank you so much for participating in that. And I'm going to take my leave now, and you're welcome to stay and keep discussing and sharing. And I'll see you next time. Mwah.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.